inviting me. Going to try and explore some thoughts around game art education, talking about sort of options that are available for people, and just how you might approach it, depending on whether you're currently a student, you're becoming a student, you're looking at maybe doing self-taught approaches, just looking at different options and sort of just talking about game art. And I think it's an important topic because for me, kind of DinCon, that's sort of what this is all about. Like if you look at the talks that have happened over the last couple of weeks, everything has kind of been driven by making game art more accessible to people, helping people improve. And I guess that's really what Jeremy does in his streams all the time. So I think it's a relevant topic. Um, so a little bit about me, I guess, to start. I've been lecturing in game art for God, it's over 15 years now. I'm old. And along with that, I've also been involved in a number of like commercial ventures and projects. Done a lot of stuff around ArcViz, AR, and VR projects. So combination of kind of industry experience along with teaching. And game art education is something that means a lot to me. Like, if any of you follow me on Twitter, you probably will get that impression. It's something that I think is kind of in a state of flux right now, and needs to be, I think, because there's definitely some issues there that we're going to explore and look at. So to go with that, I've organized an event called Niche. We'll look at that later on as well. So the talk is going to be a combination of a few things that we're doing at the college that I'm based at, and obviously then things that other people can kind of do as well. And as Jeremy said, I have Alex here with me. I thought it would be kind of cool to have a student perspective on all this. So it's one thing hearing it from me, kind of a seasoned veteran, if you will, but to have Alex's perspective on a couple of things will be hopefully very interesting as well. So Alex, if you want to introduce yourself a little bit and tell people about who you are and what your story is.
Sure thing. So, hi, my name is Paul Alex Nieder. I've been studying under Paul for roughly about 5 years or so. And today I'll be here to answer any questions that might benefit from a student standpoint. Anything from education to portfolio and kind of my thought process behind it.
Awesome. So with that said, I guess the question then is like, how do you learn game art? How do you game art? And this answer is something that I've seen come up so many times on Jeremy's stream, like when people are asking about processes and techniques and ways to approach things from an artistic perspective. The answer is it depends. And I think game art education is very much in the same vein. It depends on a lot of different things. It depends on you as a person. It depends on where you're based. It depends on the options that you have in front of you in terms of university. It depends on the mentors that maybe are accessible to you. There's lots of different factors that are kind of there that need to be looked at, and that's what I kind of want to look at as I go through the presentation. Um, One of the most important things, and I think this maybe doesn't really get talked about enough, is the concept of learning styles. So we all learn in different ways. Um, I think maybe a lot of people just think learning is all about like watching videos or reading articles or whatever it might be. But learning is a process that we all do differently, and people can be defined by their learning style. And there are different models and different things that you can look at in relation to that. I've put some links in this presentation that people can kind of look at later, maybe if they're interested. But one of them is what we refer to as VAC, and that's visual, audio, and kinesthetic learning. So if you take something like, for example, normal maps or any topic, say you're learning about normal maps and how normal maps work. Some people might learn that best by like reading an article. They have like a document in front of them and they can go through the theory and they can see diagrams of how the rays of the normals kind of function and so on and so forth, and that's how they understand it. Some people might get a better understanding through watching videos or listening to podcasts or watching a stream like Jeremy's and seeing people kind of explore it that way. And then there are other people who maybe sort of look at it from the kinesthetic perspective. and they learn best by kind of doing things. So like experimentation, figuring stuff out for themselves. So the first thing that I would say, if you're considering like game art and you're considering like your options, I would look into how you learn as a person. Look back at things that you've learned in the past. Like if you picked up a new language or anything like guitar, or like how did you do that? How did that work for you? What kind of aids did you use when you were learning? And try and utilize that as something that informs your decision making. Because I think that's maybe the most important underlying thing, is that it's about helping people make informed decisions. So it's not about telling people this is the way to do things, and that's something I'll touch on as I go through the presentation. So take a look at learning styles. Try and figure out where you sit in relation to that. Just when I'm on this topic, before I kind of move on, it was interesting to hear kind of like Ole, who spoke. I think it was week 1 or week 2 of DinCon. Ole, who is a super talented weapons artist, and just hearing his sort of journey through his learning. He took a very self-directed approach. I know he didn't have maybe the best educational experience, but he was able to sort of drive himself forward through learning what he needed to learn. Very sort of self-motivated. He became an independent learner very quickly, and it just sort of struck me that that's great and that worked for him. But just thinking about me as a learner, um, I've been meaning to learn sort of blueprints for years now. I initially started working with Unity, and we transitioned over to Unreal a number of years ago. But I've never, until maybe like last semester, my sort of expertise with blueprints was fairly limited. But I'm currently doing my master's, my MA, in game design, and in 3 months I learned more about blueprints than I've learned in years. And the reason for that was I was in like a structured environment. I had a set curriculum. I had weekly lectures. I had assignments to work towards that guided my learning, that pointed me in directions in terms of what I had to explore. Um, so this whole concept is something that, as I say, is very different for people. It's not one size fits all. It's very individual, and one of the things that I kind of want to get across through the presentation is that you really can't base your learning journey on what other people tell you. You kind of have to figure it out for yourself as you go through. Once you do that, once you get your learning style down, so like once you think about, okay, I'm a visual learner, or I'm a kinesthetic learner, whatever it might be. Up until now, there's kind of been, I would say, two main pathways. There's been sort of the traditional taught approach, which usually stipulates university. And then there's the more kind of independent self-taught approach, which is, I guess, a little maybe more recent, newer. But something I want to get across very early on is that both of these are very, very viable, and that might seem weird for a lecturer to say, but I think that's just my honest opinion. Like there's no point in saying to people that this is what you should do. As I said, people have to kind of reach the way of learning that suits them best. And if self-taught is something that you think would work for you, then we'll look at that through this and kind of explore kind of things that you can maybe do to make that learning journey as good as it can be. Um, and if university is for you, then that's also something that we'll look at and explore through this presentation. I don't really want to read through this slide, and the next one kind of has like, so these are some of the pros that people typically associate with each of the different pathways. And the next slide has some of the downsides. So I don't really want to read through them. I think that kind of makes for quite a boring presentation. But I'll just talk about maybe a few things in relation to these two pathways, and kind of my thoughts on them, and how that sort of fits at the minute. I was appalled, honestly appalled by some of the stories that I've heard over the last couple of weeks. Like listening to Ole talk about his educational experience. I've spoken to people like Alex Beddoes before, and he's told me a little bit about sort of like his educational experience. It's kind of shocking. It's a little bit, it's very disappointing. Not a little bit disappointing. It's very disappointing. I think from what I'm hearing, there are definitely institutions out there that are failing their students. And I don't want to accuse anyone. That's not really what this is about. It's more kind of about raising awareness and helping students maybe avoid a situation where they're attending one of those universities. Um, like if you're taking money from a student as an institution, the very least that you owe them is an education that they can be proud of. And that's what we've tried to do at where I work, and that's something that we'll look at again later in the presentation. Um, it's not all doom and gloom. I'm just trying to be honest about it. Like, I think education is something that varies greatly from one case to another. If you look at Jasmine, who spoke earlier in the week, you look at Yin, who also spoke at DinCon last week. Like, it's pretty evident that their universities have done a pretty good job. You look at Alex, who's here with me this evening. Alex hasn't even graduated, and already he's been offered a job in the industry. And that doesn't happen, through fluke. That comes from, I think, the curriculum being quite well designed, him receiving the support and guidance that he needed to push his portfolio to a place where he could gain employment. So there's pros and cons, swings and roundabouts. Something else that I kind of want to touch on is, and this is again just me being honest, there's kind of there's a little bit of a mantra at the minute on social media whereby I think self-taught is kind of seen as the saving grace of game art education. Everybody's like, you don't need to go to college. You can grab these 3 tutorials of YouTube. You can do this mentorship, and you're going to be sorted. Like, why would you pay 10 grand for that, et cetera, et cetera. And I respect people. Like, obviously, people have had very mixed experiences, and I think they have to tell their truths, which they're fully entitled to do. But I don't think self-taught is without its flaws. I think there's a number of things that would concern me about a self-taught approach. And again, we'll look at those and explore them. From my personal experience, a couple of years ago, about 4 or 5 years ago now, I undertook a mentorship with a weapons artist, a guy who was working in a AAA studio, and I paid it was over $1,000, I think, for like maybe an 8-week program, something like that. And it was awful. Like, it was so bad. Like, the guy was using like 3-year-old video tutorials that he recorded with out-of-date software. It was more a case of the whole teaching aspect was, this is how I do this. If you don't like that or you don't understand that, that's a you problem. But then I'm currently doing a mentorship with Jeremy, and that has been one of the most impactful learning experiences that I've ever had. It's helped transform our curriculum. Like, Jeremy and people like Maarten have really helped elevate our curriculum to align it more closely to what industry expects. And I want to do more mentorship training under Jeremy. So the point I'm trying to get across is that don't skew your judgment on how you should approach game art education on what other people are saying. I'll give you some advice and tips of what I think may help you reach a decision. But what works for one person isn't necessarily going to work for you. So you kind of have to explore it for yourself and establish what you think is going to be the solution for you. As I said, some of the most common benefits of both are kind of on the screen. I think one of the big things about a degree is travel. If you're considering working in another country, there's definitely certain countries where work visas are a lot more easy to obtain if you've got a formal degree. An established curriculum can really help with people like me who prefer a more structured approach to learning. But then on the other side, you've got things like, if you get the right mentor, if you find somebody that, is prepared to work with you and has your best interest at heart, you're learning directly from somebody who's a practicing artist who's daily dealing with the problems and techniques and processes that you have to learn, which you can get in university as well. And that's something that we'll look at in regards to what we call the hybrid technique. But yeah, it swings and roundabouts. But I think the most important point to take away from that is that don't judge education or learning based on what you've heard. Investigate, research, ask questions. We'll look at all that in later on, but don't just swing it based on what you've heard online. Some of the downsides, again, I've mentioned many of these. One of the big ones for me, just before we kind of move on from this, is that I think for me, learning is something that works best in a sort of a peer environment where you've got people to bounce ideas off, where you've got people to give you critique on what you're doing, people to help pick you up on the down days, people to sort of push you forward when you're feeling low, people to call you out when your work's not good enough. And you can get that from self-taught to a degree as well. Like Discords has made that a lot easier. You've got loads of communities now, like the club, the Empire community, experience points. Like there's tons and tons and tons of ways of doing that through both of them. But I think there's maybe a more natural feel sometimes to the traditional approach. Sometimes I think self-taught can feel a little bit isolated. Um, and I think Jeremy mentioned something the other day about the lack of deadlines with self-taught. Like if you're just constantly watching videos or going through tutorials, or like, are you learning or are you imitating over and over and over? Like, what's the goal at the end? If you don't have like an established routine or a framework to work with yourself, then I'm not really sure if self-taught will work for you. So that's where I think you need to be like Oli and kind of have a clear idea of what you're doing and where you're going. So some points to consider that we can revisit later. But yeah, those are the two main ones that we've got so far. So knowing that, I kind of looked at both of those and I kind of saw benefits to both. And this is what I've basically tried to do this year with the college where I work, and that's to develop what I call a hybrid model, trying to pull together the benefits of both approaches. So taking like an established curriculum, but making sure that it was industry informed. Like when I was writing our degree, along with the team that works with me, we made very sure that we were talking to people, we were talking to artists, we were asking recruiters, we were um, speaking to people who work in this space every single day and asking them about what was important, what were the key skills, what were the core techniques that people needed to understand. Um, so it was a very industry aligned curriculum. It wasn't just a curriculum that was 10 years old and what I learned at university. I think that's one of the biggest issues with traditional education in the game art space. A lot of the tutors and sort of lectures are maybe a little bit dated. This space changes so quickly that if you're not prepared to kind of like constantly update and motivate and change what you're doing to reflect what the industry needs, then I don't think you're really giving your students the best opportunities. We supplemented what we were doing with representatives from industry, and again, we'll mention them more later on. But basically, we've had over 40 talks from artists on a weekly basis with our students. So there were like workshops on specific techniques. Jeremy kicked off that process by doing like a substance painter masterclass back in September, I think it was. And we've had people like from Sony Santa Monica, people from different Ubisoft studios. We'll look at the names later, but yeah, consistently bringing people in to talk to students. Um, in line with that, and this is something that I think is just instrumental to game art education, regardless of what pathway you go down, we tried to facilitate persistent, regular feedback, critique. So putting student work not only in front of tutors, but also putting student work in front of artists. So we were very, very lucky. Several of my students have had like the opportunity to get direct one-to-one feedback from some of the best artists in the industry, in my opinion. Like pen overdraw type critique, comments on the Discord, comments on Twitter. So we've kind of built a fairly robust learning community. It's not perfect, excuse me, It's something that's a work in progress. There's a lot more to do with it. But for this being year one of our new degree program, I'm very pleased with where it's at and where it's going. Um, we've also tried to incorporate external resources. So we're frequently pointing students towards Twitch streams, ArtStation learning content, ArtStation marketplace content, and that isn't sort of like lie back and just point students towards tutorials. That would be a very lazy approach. We obviously develop content internally as well, but we supplement that with industry standard resources. So we're trying to build a bridge between students and sort of creative artists, practicing artists, so that they kind of have a little mini social network established for themselves before they even get to the graduation stage. They know of and are aware of people. They've spoken to artists. I think that all helps when it comes to like even interviews and stuff. If people know you and are aware of you as a person, then that all pushes you in the right direction in terms of where you're going. So I mentioned people. The people on the left hand side. So we've been lucky enough to bring people over to the college. We've had like Karen Stanley, Hannah Watts, Kim Ava, like people that I really look up to, people that I think are very representative of the best the industry has to offer. This year, because of COVID, the possibilities for having face-to-face workshops and feedback sessions and stuff wasn't really an option. So as I said, we've had online workshops on our Discord, and some of the names that we've had this year are on the right-hand side. So we've had like Jeremy, as I mentioned, Ben, who I know was in chat earlier, Rick Grieve, Maarten Hoff, Ivana. Been very, very lucky. One of the things that I've definitely discovered this year is the generosity. Like there's a real empathy in the game art community. Like there's a lot of people that are very willing to help. Um, like the amount of help I've received is just astounding. Like none of what I'm trying to do with this whole change game art and revolutionize the approach to it wouldn't be possible without the people that are here on the screen and many many more. Um, so don't be hesitant about reaching out to people. Like these people are genuinely really good people. I had a conversation a couple of weeks ago, and I think students and people that look at these people, they kind of put them on a pedestal to some degree. Like they see the art that they've made. Jeremy is like, holy shit, Jeremy made Division 2. And for a student, it's like, I'm not going to be able to talk to him. He's not going to want to talk to me. And you kind of like, you attach kind of an achievement to the person. And I think that can make it difficult to approach them or talk to them. Try and see the person, I think, behind the artist. Like all these people are people. They go for pizza, they watch anime, they watch TV shows. They had to learn their craft the same way that you're trying to learn your craft. Try and look at them as people rather than these superstars, if you will. They are superstars. I'm not taking away from their achievements, but I think you get the point that I'm trying to make. So we've been very very blessed by the people that we've had over. Just before I move on and talk about ways that you can facilitate and improve maybe your chances of making your game art journey better for you, I wanted to share this because a lot of this might seem like, of course, Paul's going to say all this stuff. It's his college and it's his way of doing things, and um, I'm quite an honest person. Like as I said before, like what we're doing isn't perfect at all. But this is just a screenshot from our Discord server, from Kieran Goodson, who some of you may well know from like the amazing content that he shared on ArtStation. Kieran has done a lot of work around like CV creation and the interview process. He's been very supportive of what we've been doing. And a couple of months back, I was nominated for Grads in Games, for the bits and pieces that I've been doing in game art education. And this was kind of a response from Kieran on the server. And I put it here not to sort of like, look, we're great. It's not that at all. It's more about, it's sad in a way. Like when you read this, you kind of get the impression that, what we're doing seems to be kind of very much in the minority. This isn't normal. You're literally the luckiest students in the world. And hearing that from him is great in one sense, because it's like, okay, what we're doing is good. But is it really that bad elsewhere? I can safely say that 99% of game students worldwide have not been this blessed. So, I think academia has some stepping up to do. That's definitely the impression I'm getting. As I said, there are good universities. There absolutely are good universities. There's a lot of really hardworking tutors and lecturers throughout the world. I'm not trying to put them down at all. But there's also some horror stories on both sides of the coin, both like mentors and tutorials, but definitely education. It's not fair to do what some of these people are doing, and that needs to change. So hopefully that's the sort of the direction that we're heading in. But that was amazing. That made my year to read that from Kieran. So yeah. So that's us. That's a little bit about where I work and what we've been doing. But obviously, many of you are not a student of mine. You're at different universities. You're maybe doing a self-taught approach. You're retraining. You were a mechanic for 10 years, and now you want to make games, which is totally viable. So how do you go about this then? All this sounds great, but you can't come to where I teach, and this isn't going to happen where your local university is, or whatever it might be. So I thought I thought I would explore some things that you can maybe consider, keep in mind when you're trying to make the decision, questions and areas that you can kind of go off to and look at. I think the first thing that I will say is, regardless of where you're at, you need to take control of where you're going. And that isn't always easy. Like if you feel like you're in a crap university, or you feel like you've paid money to a mentor and it's not working out, it's very demotivating. But I honestly believe that if you start to take action, if you start to try and put the pieces together, however broken they might be, that's kind of the first step in getting off the proverbial island and sailing towards a better education. God, that was a terrible analogy. But these questions are kind of the things that I think that are important, and I think they will help you in making a more informed decision. So if you're going to a university, if you're going to a mentor, if you're going to wherever you're choosing to sort of get your education from, the first thing I would say is ask them to show you some of the stuff that they've made. So I think all tutors should have, they should practice what they preach. If they're telling you or showing you how to model things and texture things and render things, they should be texturing things and modeling things and rendering things, and you should be able to see that. So like I'm constantly trying to improve and get better. My Twitter is full of good and not so good attempts at game art. Like I'm still learning as well. But I think you're entitled to sort of see where they're at with their art. If they're going to be teaching you, then they owe it to you to sort of showcase, what they're about and what they're doing. I'm just going to go through these because I think they're kind of important. I would also ask whoever it is that you're studying with, whether again it's a mentor or a tutor or whatever, about their curriculum. How is it written? How is it developed? Is it aligned to industry? And not just like prove that to me. Like show me how it's aligned to industry. The stuff that Jeremy covers on his stream every week, like that is the kind of things that you should be learning. Those techniques and those workflows are literally what wherever you study should be covering with you. So if you're not sure about what those things might be, go back through maybe Jeremy's YouTube archive. Try and figure out what the core important things are, and then bring those to the person that you're applying to, and ask them to show you evidence of these things. So like, how do you deal with scope? How do your students deal with scope? Scope was brought up a lot recently. Like, how is that factored into your curriculum? And if they can give you an answer to that, it's probably a very good indication that they know what they're doing. And if they can't, then I guess you go elsewhere. you maybe don't pay them lots of money to teach you. How often are your materials updated? Um, Ask to see some of their learning materials. Like, is there free samples that you can look at? Are there tutorials that they've put on YouTube that they've done publicly that they can show you, how they teach people? Um, I see this quite a lot with um, mentors, I have to say, and I've heard from different people about resources are recorded, but they're maybe not updated as frequently as they could be in a lot of cases. Um, so I think that's an important question. Ask them about where students go when they finish. Like, where have your previous mentees gone? Where have your students ended up? What's the employment rate like after graduation? Those are nice metrics to kind of get a feel for, you know, how skilled the people are when they come out of the university or mentorship. And it might not always be great. Like the numbers might be kind of low in places, but that could be because of the geographic location. It's not always a bad thing, but there should be some kind of signs that there's progression, that the people who complete this course move on to employment in some capacity. Because at the end of the day, like that's what education's for, right? Like if you're studying something, the end goal is generally so that you can utilize it to make money. So talk to them about that. I think they're in set that the assessment policy that they use. So this is more university specific, I guess. Um, if a university is telling you that, and my students are all going to hate me now and say this is not what you told us, but it is to a degree. Grades are not a huge thing. Like they're not a huge thing. They're important. I think they are nice to have. All of our assessment is designed on an 80-20 breakdown. So 80% of the grades for all of our assessments are what people make. So it's their portfolio. And every module that we've designed has an outcome that goes on the student's portfolio. Because I think the most fundamental important thing that you can have as a game art student is your portfolio. So if your university is getting you to write like tons and tons of essays and, maybe a lot of theory and stuff like that, maybe they've got good intentions, but I would ask them like, why? Is it possible to change this? Can I not do a practical assessment? Because at the end of the day, like when you go to look for a job, and like Alex can talk about this as well, like when you got offered your opportunity, Alex, like they didn't ask you for your grades. Is that right? Am I correct in saying that?
Yeah, it was mostly just portfolio based. It didn't even feel like an interview.
Mm-hmm.
I worked in retail a while back, and that interview was completely different to a game art interview.
Mm-hmm.
Game art interview is a lot more kind of chilled and laid back, and it's kind of like a room of people just talking about art, asking you how you approach certain things, different techniques that you used. One of the most important questions was, how can you do something better? So kind
Mm-hmm.
of being critical of your own art.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah,
But your grades weren't mentioned.
nope,
Yeah, yeah.
not
So,
once.
mm. so yeah, grades are nice, but at the end of the day, I think spend your time making your portfolio the best it can be, regardless of what pathway you choose, because I think that's the most important thing. So do research. Talk to students or other people who've done the course before. Talk to people who've been under mentorship with people before. What were their thoughts and feelings? How did they find it? Check out people's social media. Like look at people's art stations, their Twitter. Don't look at my art station because I haven't updated it in God knows when. But my Twitter has lots of stuff that I've been working on recently. But do some research. Look at what people have been active on, what they've been doing, what they've kind of been involved with, and use that as kind of a gauge to kind of inform where you're going. So I guess it's about taking control of your learning. It's about trying to establish what you want to do, and this is difficult. I know that this is something Jeremy has looked at several times. I think when you're a student, it's probably better to be a generalist as best you can, like keeping your doors open as much as you can. Um, I'm not saying like obviously if you really know that you want to be like a lighting artist, then obviously that's great, that's fantastic. But it's probably a good idea early on to try and open as many doors as you possibly can, because you're not really sure yourself maybe if you're going to be good at that or you're going to enjoy that. So keep it general. Try and dip your finger into everything and sort of test the waters and see how you feel about stuff. Um, Ask questions. Be active about asking questions. Don't just ask your tutor or your mentor. Like, ask as many people as you can. Join Discords. Talk to people on Discords. Try and make friends with other artists that are at a similar point in their journey as you are. Um, I think that network, that infrastructure of having people, friends to reach out to, can be super useful. Resources can be really good, and I've got a list of resources later on, which hopefully will help people. And set goals, and that's super important for particularly self-taught. I think you can very easily get lost in limbo through the self-taught approach because you don't have deadlines, you don't have assignments. So I think it's really important that you kind of establish goals for yourself, like what do you want to achieve, where are you going, that kind of stuff. So I've mentioned people, and I kind of want to spend a bit of time just pointing people towards other people. These are people who have been instrumental in helping me and making all of this possible. Like, as I said, this journey is not just down to me and the team at the college. It's very much industry led. So I wanted to give a thank you and a shout out to some of what I consider to be some of the most amazing people I've ever met, at least virtually at this stage. So just to go through these, Maarten Hoff is an Ubisoft artist. Our assignment for our environment module this year was based on a concept from Maarten. Super talented dude. Very, very, very gifted. Nikkita is a freelance artist. She does a lot of work with Beyond Extent. You may have seen some of her projects, the challenges that she's been involved with through Beyond Extent. Super super cool stylized artist. Really supportive of my students as well. Svend is also Ubisoft. Man, Ubisoft are getting some serious love. He's a really cool guy as well. He's doing the Decagon challenge. Both him and Maarten are doing the post-apocalyptic Decagon challenge. You may have seen their stuff on Twitter. But a really cool guy. Georgia is based at Dambusters. Georgia was a huge help to me early on. I remember reaching out to Georgia right back when I was thinking about all this stuff about like how the best way would be to get students feedback, and she had loads of advice and tips. She's super supportive on our server. She's super supportive on several discords. But super talented, amazing person. Alberto is based at High Moon Studios. I hope that's right. He runs his own Discord community. Again, amazing artist. Very into Blender. Has been very helpful again for me and for students in terms of the transition to Blender. So yeah, really good guy. Ioana, I don't know if I said that right. Ioana. I hope I said that right. Ioana is a freelance artist, Aspire Interactive, where she works. She's heavily involved with Beyond Extent as well. Super talented artist. All these people are super talented artists. Very supportive of my students. Finn, again, amazing person, has done some amazing stylized work. These are all people I think you should follow. Like, if you're not following these people, I would highly recommend doing so, because they all have information, knowledge, and insight to share. So Laetitia is based in France. She's at Void Interactive. Has spoken to my students, is very supportive. Henning is one of the guys behind Flip Normals. They're doing a lot of work in relation to obviously creating and learning content for students. One of the best sort of online resources for that. I've mentioned Kieran before. He's based at Rebellion. Has done some really good stuff on ArtStation Learning. Top guy. On the last page, I promise, of these, Stephen is my colleague. Stephen works alongside me at the college, so he's been instrumental in making all this happen as well. Jason Ord, if you want to learn Substance Painter, I think probably the best resource out there right now is Jason's hand drill tutorial. So he's talked to my students on a number of occasions and has gone through texturing with them and stuff. Kate Blackshear, another stylized artist, very supportive of other people. Kate recently completed, I believe completed or is completing, a mentorship with one of the guys from Ubisoft, Lucas something. I can't remember his second name. God, that's awful. But the work that she's doing is absolutely amazing, and a really kind of good example of where a mentorship can work. Hannah is also Ubisoft. We had Hannah over a couple of years back. She's worked on like the Marmoset tutorials, and she's done stuff for Flip Normals as well. And last but not least, I think this guy's name is actually Emil Sigers. Jeremy, you might know him. I'm pretty sure he worked on Division 2, but he's putting out content under FastTrackTutorials. And there's lots of really good learning there: prop creation, material creation, all that kind of stuff. So these people are definitely, these are people you can probably talk to that may help in making your decision, that may help you on your journey. This is sort of something that I think is also important to touch on as you go through your journey. So there's this whole concept of what they call the gap. You guys may have seen this before, but basically, when you're learning game art, your ability to discern what's good art develops a bit quicker than your ability to create good game art or good art, whatever art discipline you're studying. And what can happen is you kind of find yourself in the gap. So like you're able to tell what is nice game art, but then you make stuff and you look at it and you go, holy crap, it's nowhere near that. And that's just because your ability to create good game art takes a little bit longer to develop than your ability to discern what's good game art. So don't get frustrated by that. It's sort of it's something that we all go through, and this is something that's come up several times, but I think it bears repeating again. Don't compare yourself with others. Like, don't look at all these people that I've mentioned and go, holy crap, my art's nowhere near that. Look at yourself. Look at where you were 3 months ago. Look at where you were 6 months ago. Gauge your success based on how you've improved, how you've gone forward as an artist, not how other people are doing, and keep going. These are some resources. Most of these are fairly well known, I would imagine. Just to mention the Empire Command, I know Jeremy is working behind the scenes on Empire University, and I think that's going to be something that's going to be extremely useful for everybody that's studying game art. But for now, there's definitely like a resource, a listing, if you will, of really good tutorials and content that I would highly recommend. Wing Fox is another one. Wing Fox is I think it's a Chinese website, but it has some amazing educational content that I would highly recommend. You look at some really good tutorials and learning. ArtStation, Flip Normals, Experience Points, Dylan. These are probably fairly well known, but you can take a look if not. And then just to close, I don't know what I'm like for time. I don't have a clock near me, but I think this is sort of coming up to my time. To kind of, I guess, summarize then, research your options. Don't be afraid of asking questions and taking your time. Don't be influenced by what other people have told you. Like, that's probably the best advice I can give you, because their experience will not be your experience. So what worked for them will be like down to their learning style and their mentor and their way of doing things. And if that worked for them, that's great, but it doesn't mean it's going to work for you. Take breaks. I think that's super important. It's so easy to compromise your mental health and your physical health. Like, there's a constant need to like work, be better. It's really important that you stop, that you pause, that you watch anime, that you play with your cat. Life is like, there's time for everything, and if you take a more balanced approach, you'll generally come out of it a lot better, I think. Jeremy didn't pay me to say this, but so this is just totally on me. But watch Jeremy's streams. I don't think there's a better resource for learning game art than what Jeremy does every single week. I have now made Jeremy's streams integral to our core curriculum, so all of our students are pushed towards his streams every single time he goes online. I honestly just can't praise him enough. The content that he's putting out there, his YouTube channel is a treasure trove of awesome game art stuff. Like, there's so much stuff on there. Like, if there's something that you're struggling with, I guarantee you go onto Jeremy's YouTube and you search for it, you'll find something that's useful. Get critique regularly. again, get as many eyes as you possibly can on what you're doing. That's so important. Um, Even show stuff to like your family and friends, your mom, dad, brother, sister. Show them what you're aspiring towards. Like take a picture of a game that you really like, and maybe you're trying to do something in that art style. Show them the picture, and then show them your work, and ask them, does that look like that? So even if they're not an artist, they can try and give you like some thoughts on how you're doing with what your goals are. Um, I've put learn Blender in here, not to sort of like have a, oh, this Blender is like the tool, etc. Like a circle jerk around what's the best tool. That's not what it's about. Blender is we moved to Blender this year, and it was after talking to Jeremy and Maarten extensively about the tool. There's two reasons why I think learning Blender is important. One, I think it has a very robust toolkit for game art creation, probably the most robust out of all the tools that are out there, and I've used pretty much all of them. But the more important one is that it's free. Like as a student, you're going to have enough other costs that maybe you can't avoid. So having something that powerful for free is something I would highly recommend. Um, don't compare yourself to other people. Don't compromise your mental health. I've already said that. And don't take critique as an attack on your work. I think that's something a lot of students kind of feel with, or struggle with, not feel with, but struggle with as they progress through. Like if you show your work to somebody and they come back and tell you like this is wrong, and you look at that and your values are off and your composition's a little bit whack or whatever, you can't afford to sort of like be defensive of that. You know, you should be looking at that as this is the most valuable information that I can gain to make myself better. Like if the person that's giving you it comes from a good place, which hopefully they do, it's going to be constructive feedback. It's going to be feedback that's designed to help you become better at what you're doing. So don't kind of be defensive or hesitant about putting your work out there and getting critique. That is the best way to learn. And don't be scared of not knowing stuff. Like I've been teaching this stuff for years and years and years, and every time I talk to Jeremy, I don't know stuff. So it's not about nobody expects you to know everything, or be a master of everything. Um, just enjoy it and try and make informed decisions for yourselves. If I can be of any help, like with that in any way, I'm more than happy to try. There are other people on here that you can reach out to as well. So yeah, I think that's pretty much a whistle stop tour of game art education. That's Alex's Twitter and his ArtStation. That's my Twitter. Thank you very much.
I feel like we should have like a clapping track now that because it's so quiet when it ends. I need to just press a button where there's like claps and
yeah.
Chat will clap with emotes and whatnot, I'm sure.
Awesome.
Dude, the whole like the thing you were talking about with always discovering and learning things. Dude, we were in a mentorship call and I discovered stuff.
Man, like it's crazy. The node graph in Unreal, the isolate.
Yeah, that was
feature,
hilarious.
Like, I was like, oh, I've been using this for 10 years and I didn't know it existed. It's
super
mad.
funny.
Yeah. But that's part of like what makes it interesting and fun. Like, you're always going to learn new things and discover stuff that you don't know. I think that's just the natural part of, working in any discipline. But don't let that put you off, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Like, you're not expected to know everything. Just be eager to learn and willing to learn. I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah. No, it's well put. We have, what do we have? We have 6 questions, and they're kind of
cool.
I feel like those could be pretty deep.
Okay.
But Tobias in chat is asking what the name of their school is actually.
It's Southwest College. I can't. I'm on a single screen setup. It's at swc.ac.uk.
Tobias will probably find it now and then post it in chat.
Yeah, or I'll
But Southwest College
later. Southwest College. Yeah, swc.ac.uk.
There it is. It's in chat now. All right. So okay, so let's get this first question going here. So generally, there tends to be a gap between graduates' portfolios and the quality that is desired for a junior position. This is Ryan. Let me click on here. ufunwrap.com, Ryan. Do you feel that education institutions oversell the importance of having a degree? And do you think that they should be more transparent about the experience their staff has in order to better inform students of what their experience will be like?
That's a really good question. I think transparency is absolutely required. I kind of alluded to that in the talk. Like, you know, even if it's not apparent, you should be asking people for like evidence of what they've done, their background, their art, what they've been working on, tutorial samples if possible. So I definitely think that transparency is key. Um, I don't know about the sort of like the gap. I think that depends a lot on the institution and the student. Like again, if you look back at like Jasmine and Yin and Alex, you know, there's not much of a gap there. Like if they're walking out of their degree and they're walking into like employment, then obviously something's kind of working right. So I think it depends on the institution. It depends on the student. Um, I think maybe there is a little bit of a history from universities where they maybe oversell a little bit. You know, they glamorize the game dev side of things. You know, that maybe is the case. Okay, but I don't think that's all institutions. I think that again just comes down to research and looking at your options um, and it's also on the student as well. I don't think that's something that just fully is down on the on the place that you're learning. Like you bring so much to the table as well. So like how you engage with your learning, how much you invest, how you manage your time. There's a lot of things there, but transparency, I would say 100%. Yeah, that's really important.
Awesome. Is Alex, do you have anything you want to say on that? I don't know if I should.
No, go for it.
That's why I'm here. Yeah, definitely agreed with Paul in terms of taking in charge of your learning. That's something that I've learned. So as I said before, I was with Paul for the last 5 years, and between completing my degree this year, I took a year out to kind of go the whole self-taught aspect, just because I've been in college for a number of years, and I just kind of wanted to see what it was like self-taught, and the difference is huge. Just because being in a university and having deadlines to meet, I think that's one of the most important things. Obviously, as self-taught, you can set your own deadlines, but there's nothing really pressuring you to finish them. And that's kind of where I saw my growth. Like if I look at my art a year ago, when I took the time out, it's night and day between there and now. And for me, personally speaking, university kind of helped me grow that extra mile in such a short period of time.
Right. Yeah, that's
Cool.
awesome. It's interesting to have like, it sounds like you're experiencing more of that hybrid experience where it's like a school teaches you how to, it's almost like a school teaches you how to learn, and then you go in and start learning with that mindset. And then having the deadlines is really important as well.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, now the questions are coming in. Okay, we'll move a little faster. Do you think that art fundamentals such as composition, color theory, etc., should be included in the game art degrees? This person, Abigail, in my experience, it was not really addressed, but is really important for game art.
I think it's absolutely crucial. I think color composition, lighting, exploration of value, just art fundamentals are intrinsic to any art discipline. So like we would definitely look at those and explore those in year one. You know, those things are the foundation on which everything else sort of stems. I think one of the things I would say as well is that when you're looking at options and stuff, if a university is like selling or promoting, or a mentor is talking about like a specific software tool, or like come learn Maya or whatever. That can work to a degree, but I think the better ones are the ones that are software agnostic, the ones that are kind of like more concerned with processes and concepts and not really concerned about what you use to create them. Okay, there are industry standard tools for sure. Like if you're doing sculpting, you should probably be learning ZBrush. If you're doing texturing, it's probably going to be Substance. But like at the end of the day, what matters is your ability to create art. So you definitely need to have an understanding of like color, light, composition. Those are fundamental for sure.
Mm. What's the Alex? Would you like to? Do you want to chime in on any of that, or anything to add to that?
I mean, Paul's kind of nailed it in the head.
All right.
Yeah, fundamentals is kind of the important thing. We've originally we started with Maya. That's kind of the software that I know. But obviously, in recent years, we've switched to Blender. And knowing the fundamentals of modeling kind of made that transition a lot easier instead of just knowing the software.
Cool. I think so, Alex. What I'll do, because we didn't rehearse like how this would work. If you unmute your mic, and then I'll just assume that you're going to say something after Paul, and I'll just let you answer.
Yeah, sure. That's 100%.
Cool. Okay. So Ben was asking, or no, Andrew. I don't want to skip people. Do you think that game art education has a place in traditional university education system, or would it be better aligned with a trade school route?
I'm not entirely sure what he means. Like, does game art have a place in university? Yeah, absolutely. I think the journey that you take on learning game art you need to decide what's best for you. Like I was saying, can you do that through university? I think absolutely you can. A trade school, I don't know what he means by that specifically. Like with like a heavy industry focus, if that's what he means, then I think that's important as well. So I guess if he means like a traditional academic institution, then I don't think that's the best place to learn game art. I think you need to be at a school or a place where the focus is on industry. So it's very much industry aligned. Its curriculum is based on effective research into what companies expect from people. The things that students are doing in terms of their assessment are what graduates are expected to do, what people will be expecting them to do when they apply for junior positions. I hope that answers the question.
I hope it does as well. I'm not familiar with trade school route.
No,
I think that
me
is
either.
more specialized or in a specific department.
Oh, okay.
The next question.
I'm not sure about that one.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah, sorry.
How has game education evolved over the years for you since you've been at this for 15 years?
Dude, we were talking about this the other day. Like, we used Maya before Autodesk owned Maya. we started learning texturing before there was PBR. Like before PBR became a thing. Like I learned texturing in Photoshop. I made my normal maps in like Photoshop with the NVIDIA plugin.
Oh my god, yeah. I remember that.
Oh man, it's changed a lot. I think it's become easier. Not easier as in like it's easy to do it. I think it's become more accessible. That's probably the word. Like the rise of Twitch, the rise of streaming, the rise of Discord communities, the rise of Twitter, the fact that I can arrange a talk with one of the artists from God of War, Sonny Santa Monica, over the internet, and they can talk to my students. Like that just wasn't really possible. Like Jesus, we were using dial-up when I was at uni. So it's changed a lot, man. I think it's become a lot more accessible for people. But yeah, and I think it's going to constantly change. Like we're now in another state of flux. Like we've got these new consoles. We've got PS5, and they've unlocked even more potential. I think with development, we've got Unreal Engine 5, which is going to drop pretty soon, which is going to be very interesting to explore in terms of like high fidelity meshes and so on. It's just one of those things that I think like game art is a discipline that's in a constant state of change and flux. But it's changed a lot since I started, for sure. Probably less so for you, Alex, but a little bit maybe.
Yeah, I mean, whenever I first went, my game art history was I started modding on Far Cry 2. Wow, that's ages ago. That was
Nice.
like 2008, 2009. And then I've also been a part of different mod teams for the likes of Arma 3 and using things like, I think it was XNormal, and doing like textures through Photoshop. It just feels ancient compared to the luxury of Substance Painter.
It's crazy how much has changed. I always go back to like talking about the sphere that I used to eyedrop off of for normal map direction
Oh yeah,
and hand
yeah,
painting
yeah, yeah.
normals. But I
Yeah.
never talk about the fact that where did that sphere come from? And that sphere was a screenshot from a sphere that had 3 lights pointing at it, faking the vector direction.
No way.
And then having that, so it wasn't even a baked normal, it was just lighting.
Wow. Yeah, that's nuts, man.
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on mentorships popping up without any formal training and educating?
Mentorships popping up without any formal training. I think mentorships have a place. I think they can be an invaluable way of learning. Like again, the one I'm currently doing with you, like that mentorship has directly informed our curriculum. We've introduced new concepts for students to learn based on discussions that I've had with you. I think like education or like traditional education, they can have their own problems, and I think it's important that you research who the mentor is and what their background is and what their track record is, because they're not a guaranteed pleasant experience. Let's put it like that. But I think they're a very powerful way to learn, for sure. And if you find the right one, if you find the right kind of mentor for what you're looking for, I think they can be a very, very powerful and positive experience. Getting that direct, like that one-to-one with an artist that's doing this stuff every day is, that's priceless in a way. But just go into it prepared, like do research, find out if it's the right kind of thing for you. Make sure you're going to be driven enough to micromanage yourself as well. It's like university. It's not just about the tutors and the institution. It's about what you bring to the table. So if you're undertaking a mentorship, you also have to kind of like, bring your A game to that as well in order for you to get the most from it. But definitely, I think they have a place to play or a role to play. Yeah.
Do you think that game art education systems should be allowed to teach if there isn't any guest educators who work in the industry? Like if it was just what
I mean,
it has been in the past?
Yeah. I don't think that's a good way to go. You probably can, you can do it that way, but I think you gain so much from exposing students to like the work and practices of artists to, neglect embracing that as an option. Like I mentioned before about the, the welcoming nature and the sort of the empathy and the, like game art people are generally quite not good people. Like I've been overwhelmed by the response that I've had, and I don't see why other institutions couldn't do something similar. So I think it's possible, but I think it would be unwise of an institution not to incorporate like direct input from artists.
Let's see where we're at here. We've got 4 more.
Okay.
They're very, we're going pretty deep into them though, so it's really good.
Cool.
So this person is stuck in the quote unquote gap now. Is there like a recommended curriculum that we can follow as self-taught artists with rough timelines, or a rough timeline that can at least help us be guided?
I mean, I think that's kind of what you're working on, right? That sounds a little bit like what the Empire University will be.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything out there right now.
The Paulygonn, or not Paulygonn, Polycount.
Paulygonn
has a Wikipedia page that
true
does a decent job of connecting dots.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would like to have that type of stuff there and present.
Yeah. It would be nice to have like an indexed like guidebook, handbook for people who didn't want to go to university. I think that would be, and I think, as I say, that's what you're currently working on. So not yet is the answer. Maybe in the future. But I guess if right now, if you're looking for something in that, I would do what I said in the talk. I would try and I would join the Discords. I would try and join as many game art Discords as I can. So like Flip Normals, Dynasty Empire Experience Points, the Club Discord. Get yourself in a communities that are populated by artists that are doing stuff, and try and observe and ask questions and talk to them about where you should be going, what you should be doing. I'm happy to help if I can. If you send me a message on Twitter, I can give you some pointers for sure, whoever that person is. But yeah, that would be definitely something that would be very useful.
Yeah, if you when we're done with the talk, you can go back to these questions and message people.
Oh yeah,
as
yeah,
well.
on the Discord. Yeah, yeah.
So Maya is asking, any tips for transitioning between a traditional education and self-teaching, or vice versa?
That's a tricky one, because I honestly, the more I look at them, I think this hybrid approach is kind of the way to go. Like, I think if you can try and pull together the benefits of both pathways into one, for me, that sort of is the best of both worlds. So that does kind of mean, obviously, that you would go down the university route, but you would be doing it in the hybrid manner that I described. Obviously, if you want to move solely towards the self-taught route, again, talk to some of the people that I've mentioned. Talk to artists that work in the discipline that you're interested in. Try and reach out to the environment artist, the character artist, the lighting artist that you look up to, and find out what they think is important. I think your streams and streams like that are invaluable. Like, these questions are things that you answer a lot on a weekly basis. So I would try and sort of tune into them wherever you can. Podcasts are also really, really good as well, like the GDD podcast, the Environment Art podcast, the Experience Points podcast. Like, those have like interviews with artists on a fairly regular basis, and these topics and questions tend to come up quite a lot. And you can kind of figure out what people are into and what's important for you to learn. But I think just be careful about things. Like, I think the self-taught route, one of the biggest concerns that I have about it is that sort of limbo feeling. I've seen a lot of people kind of just get stuck in what I call tutorial syndrome, where all they really do is just endlessly watch videos and tutorials over and over and over. They're not really progressing, in my opinion. So I think if you go down the self-taught route, one of the things you have to be careful of is actually checking your own progress. Like, making sure that you set goals for yourself, that you reflect on what you're doing. Like, even keeping a journal of some kind would be kind of cool. Like, so you can look back and kind of see how you're approaching things, how you're evolving as an artist over time. Because you lose some of that not being in traditional education, I feel. So I would just be careful about your time management and what you're doing with your time if you're going down self-taught.
Alex unmuted. What's up?
Yeah, so just to kind of add on that, one other thing that helped me a lot was work-life balance. Definitely trying self-taught. One of the things that I kind of found myself was going in that limbo of working 10 to 12 hours a day, just kind of trying to stay on the grind. But very quick, you'd realize that it's not really healthy, both physically and mentally. So trying to, as Paul mentioned, kind of keep a journal. You work between these hours, and then everything else is kind of downtime, because that's kind of what you get at university. You work between, say, 9 to 5, then come home, do your homework, do your research, and then usually 9, 10 o'clock in the afternoon, that's usually downtime for you. So trying to imitate that would be kind of a good spot to start as self-taught.
Establishing a routine, I think, is what you're saying, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Good point. Nice one.
Yeah, I think the other thing to look at is, like, if I could go back and like know that I could be self-taught and then also have traditional education. I think if I were going to a school,
Yeah.
Knowing what is coming up in the curriculum and then being able to supplement things that I want to learn that would match well with what I'm trying to learn at school. Then because if you're learning at home through like YouTube or something, that's also considered self-teaching, but you're still in a traditional education setting. So you're kind of doing them both as well.
Yeah, I agree.
Do you think that academia needs to do more to encourage game art students to immediately set up and build their ArtStation portfolios from the onset and get it critiqued regularly? That's a really interesting one.
Yeah, I think every school should prioritize your portfolio setup. Right, that's the number one fundamental goal that any art student should have, is developing their portfolio. So I think schools need to make, and I think a lot of them do, but if they aren't, then that's definitely something for them to work on. Because, as I said in the talk, like your grades are one thing, but at the end of the day, what's going to get you employed and what's going to make you stand out as an artist is what's on your portfolio. So that is number one priority, like portfolio, portfolio, portfolio. And your school should also be facilitating as many people as possible looking at your portfolio. So, not only the tutors, I think this is really important. Like, it's one thing, I can give critique and feedback, and I do so every day to students. But there's things that I won't see that artists that are, giving feedback regularly will see. And facilitating that and making that available to students is super important. So whether it's through Discord communities, like I said, posting stuff on Twitter. I saw it earlier. There's a guy, Yuri. Oh man, I'm so bad with names, but like he posted up like an environment that he's working on. It's like a Last of Us 2 environment, in an old school. And like when he posted it, he was like, feedback and critique welcome. And I was just like, that's such a nice way of just like, putting your stuff up there and just putting that sentence underneath it, feedback and critique welcome. It just sort of invites people to kind of, take a look at what you've done, and if they've got, 5-10 minutes to spare, they can maybe send you some comments. I try and do that even for like students outside of where I teach. Like I have definitely tried to reach out and share my thoughts with people. So I think Twitter can be very useful for that. I think Twitter is a really important platform actually for game art.
All right, we're at the last question.
Whoa.
Yes. I closed it as well. So if anyone has any questions, you know that Paul and Alex are on the Discord as well. So, but let's see here. What do you think about schools that hire former students without industry experience as teachers? I don't know if this happens everywhere, but it's happened in a course I attended, not university.
I think that should raise some alarm bells for sure. Like, I think the people who are teaching you how to do something should have some sort of industry experience at least. Or if they don't have industry experience, that they have a very robust portfolio of work. So maybe they've been like freelance, or they've been, doesn't necessarily have to be industry experience, but they have to be accomplished in their field. They should definitely be working and actively pursuing what they're teaching, practicing what they're teaching. Like if you've got a tutor that's supposedly telling you how to do certain things, if they're not actively doing that themselves, I don't think that they're really what I would call a point of authority to tell you how to do it. So for me, I would say definitely they need to be accomplished. They need to have, at least a robust portfolio of work that they can show. But ideally, I think it would be better if they have at least some industry experience. Um, or I guess if they don't, say for example, you're in a situation where they are just like out of uni and they're straight into a job teaching people. If that's the case, then at least they're reaching out and bringing people in who can bring that industry perspective to what they're doing. Um, I'm not going to just automatically wipe the slate, sort of say like, no, they absolutely can't teach you. They may have knowledge to share, they may have insight to share, but if they don't have the direct experience themselves, I think the institution or university should be looking to bring in that experience from elsewhere. I think that's important. Yeah.
All right, I think that is it. We are
Awesome.
done. Yeah, it's we're not doing too bad on time.
What time is it? Oh my god. Oh jeez.
It's 9:30 for you, right?
Yeah, 9:30.
Hooray! All right. Cool. Do you guys have anything you want to say before we get out of here?
Just thank you again. I really enjoyed talking about this, and hopefully that's of some use to people and helps with making game art education better going forward.
And Alex?
Yep, pretty much the same thing. It's been an absolute blast. And me and Paul are here if anybody needs help with anything or feedback, or you know where to find us.